Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're jumping into something really ambitious, a kind of theory of everything, but for the human mind. We're going to be exploring Ken Wilber's integral psychology, which is basically his attempt to create one single, unified map of consciousness, a map that could make sense of it all, from hard science to ancient spirituality.
So let me ask you this. Have you ever felt just lost, trying to make sense of who you even are? One minute you're watching a science show that tells you you're basically a sophisticated biological robot. The next, you're reading a spiritual text that says you're pure, timeless awareness. It's so easy to feel pulled apart by these completely different stories, leaving you with, well, a pretty fragmented picture of yourself.
And you know, this feeling of fragmentation, it's the very problem that integral psychology sets out to solve. It goes right after what the philosopher Ken Wilber calls the great split in how we understand our world.
I mean, look at these two columns. On one side, you've got modern science. It says the world is fundamentally matter and energy. Your inner life, your consciousness, your thoughts and feelings, that's all just a side effect of your brain firing away. But then, on the other side, you have these ancient wisdom traditions that say the exact opposite. They say the whole universe is consciousness, and the physical world is just how it shows up. It's like they're not even speaking the same language.
Wilber came up with a really great term for this tendency to only trust what science can physically measure. He calls it flatland. In flatland, the only things considered real are the things we can see, touch, and quantify. And what's the big deal? Well, our incredibly rich inner worlds, our values, our emotions, that feeling of awe, it all gets flattened out, reduced to nothing more than electrical signals in the brain.
Okay, so how do we escape flatland? How do we heal this deep split in our knowledge? This is where the big, bold idea comes in. Wilber doesn't just throw another theory into the ring. Instead, he proposes creating a master map, one that's designed to include all the other maps.
And this quote right here, it just captures the whole spirit of the project perfectly. It starts with a simple question. What if everyone is a little bit right? What if psychoanalysis and behaviorism and yoga and quantum physics are all holding an important but partial piece of the truth? The goal then isn't to decide who's right and who's wrong, but to build a framework that can honor and embrace every legitimate aspect of human consciousness.
This really is the crucial point. It's not about choosing a side in some epic battle between science and spirit. It's about what Wilber calls an integral embrace. It's about building a map that's big enough to let you see the whole forest, instead of just getting into arguments about this tree or that tree. It's about seeing how all the pieces actually fit together.
So, what does this amazing map actually look like? Well, the first thing we need to understand is the terrain itself. It's a concept that's been around for ages in wisdom traditions, known as the great nest of being. So forget thinking about reality as just a flat line. The great nest imagines it more like a set of Russian dolls, one inside the other. Take a look at this picture. At the very center, you've got basic matter. That level is then nested inside the next one up, which is life. And life is then nested inside mind, and so on and so on. Each layer on the outside is more complex, but here's the key. It always includes the layers inside it.
Let's just walk through these levels real quick. We start with inanimate matter, the domain of physics. Then, emerging from that, you get life, the world of biology. From life, you get mind, which is the realm of psychology. But the ancient traditions say, hold on, it doesn't stop there. They point to levels beyond the thinking mind, like the soul, which is the deeper, more intuitive realm, and then finally to spirit itself, the formless, ultimate ground of all being.
And the main rule here is this phrase, transcend and include. Each higher level goes beyond the one before it, but it also has to include it. Think about it for a second. A living creature, like a frog, transcends the simple chemistry of its cells, but it still absolutely needs those cells to exist. A human with a thinking mind transcends simple animal biology, but we still have a living body. Nothing ever gets thrown away, it's just a system of holes, inside bigger holes, inside even bigger holes. Okay, so that's the terrain, these levels of reality. But to find our way around, we need a compass. And this brings us to probably Wilber's most famous contribution, the 4 quadrants. This is the tool that really helps us solve that feeling of fragmentation we talked about at the beginning. The compass is built on a really simple but powerful idea. We can look at anything from the interior, that's the unseen, subjective world inside of us, or we can look at it from the exterior, the seen, objective world that we can all observe from the outside. Then, we add one more line to our compass. We can look at things from the perspective of the individual, just one person, or from the perspective of the collective, meaning the group or the whole system. So, watch what happens when you put those two simple distinctions together, interior versus exterior and individual versus collective. You get this incredibly elegant and powerful grid, the 4 quadrants. Wilber's big claim is that these are the 4 fundamental viewpoints you have to take to understand anything in a complete way.
Let's just break this down real quick. The upper left, that's the I perspective. It's my private world of thoughts, feelings, and memories. The upper right is the it perspective. Think of it as what a scientist can see. My physical body, my brain states, anything you can objectively measure about me. Then we have the lower left, which is the we perspective. This is all about our shared culture, our values, our language. And finally, the lower right is the its perspective. This is the systems we all live in, the economy, the legal system, the environment. Every single one is a critical piece of the puzzle.
And here's the real punchline. To really understand any issue, you have to look at it through all 4 of these windows. Let's take something like depression. If you only look at it as a brain chemistry problem, that's just the it quadrant. You're missing the person's inner experience of suffering, the I quadrant. You're also missing the cultural pressures they're under, the we quadrant, and maybe the economic stress they're facing, the its quadrant. A truly integral view says they're all real and they all matter.
Okay, this all sounds pretty cool in theory, right? But, so what? Why does having this map actually matter in the real world? Let's just check out a couple of quick, practical applications.
First, it gives us a new way to look at cultural evolution. This diagram shows a model called spiral dynamics, which maps out how human values have shifted over history. When you put this on the integral map, you suddenly see these aren't just random opinions. They're actually developmental stages in our collective we consciousness. Each new worldview pops up to solve the problems that the previous one created.
The map is also incredibly powerful for therapy. It shows that our psychological issues can be rooted in totally different levels of who we are. For instance, standard talk therapy, that mostly works on the mind level. But what if your trauma is stored in your body level? Well, that needs a completely different approach. This map helps a therapist see the whole person and choose the right tool for the right job.
When you boil it all down, an integral approach is really a promise to honor every kind of truth. It respects the subjective truth of art and personal experience, what philosophers called the beautiful. It respects the intersubjective truth of morality and ethics, the good. It respects the objective truth of science, the true. And it respects the interobjective truth of how systems function. The point is, you need all of them.
So in the end, integral psychology is a way to call a truth. It's a framework that lets us take the very best of ancient wisdom and the very best of modern discovery, see the partial truth that lives in both, and finally start weaving them together so we can all move forward. And that idea of moving forward is so important. As Wilber writes, our modern world's attempt to just ignore anything spiritual has been a cultural catastrophe, but it doesn't leave us in despair. He gives us hope, reminding us that these deeper potentials, they're actually wired into our very being. He says that no amount of materialism could ever be strong enough to cure the soul of wonder.
So that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. If you had this map, a map of your own consciousness, one that showed your inner depths, your highest potentials, and your connection to everything else, what part of that vast territory would you want to explore first? Because with a map like this, you might just find that the greatest adventure isn't somewhere out there in the cosmos, but right here, inside yourself.